Hello, everybody. I'm Lee Camp, joined by Eleanor Goldfield.
Thank you.
How is everybody out there? I don't know if I've ever said this before, but we have a big show for you. This once. The other show's pretty weak compared to today. So
I've recently been listening to some podcasts about the philosophical question of like when something actually begins, like when does the first gray hair start to go gray?
And during this question,
and
yeah, my answer.
And then like this, this really wrestles with the issue of continuity. And anyway, so
moving on.
When does something become a big show? Like, what is the threshold?
When we start doing this one right now. Thank you for helping.
Like, how many stories
does it have to have a big show?
Like when is when do you have a pile of rocks, right?
It's kind of like the Congress said about porn. You don't define it. You just know it when you see it. Same with big show. Okay, let's get started. We got a lot for you. We're going to cover in a few minutes about the secret funding behind the Gaza aid, the new kind of spooky Gaza aid organization, literally spooky, and spook is a term for a spy.
Oh,
yep. I thought there she is, folks. I'll leave the light on for you.
Ghosts or something.
Okay, but we're going to start with an update on Gaza, 600 days of genocide. Please, everyone, remember to click thumbs up and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so we just passed yesterday, May 29th, was the 600th day of genocide in Gaza. An unenviable threshold. So we've gone through the numbers and things before, but I just wanted to share a little bit from this post, because I think it highlights some important issues, which again we've talked about, but I think it bears repeating, particularly as we've passed this threshold. There is no way of knowing the true extent of how many Palestinians have been killed. Now, we've talked about the Lancet Medical Journal's count from like a year and a half ago or something that said it was over 100,000.
It was 186,000 in last June.
So basically like a year ago. And now, it's clearly over 300,000. It's impossible to really know, though, and we've talked about this before. So again, the death toll as of yesterday by the Gaza Health Ministry, these are, again, those that have been killed and identified. And I'm not going to go through this again because I've said this many times about how they're counted. The official number is 54,249, including more than 17,500 children. The number includes at least 222 journalists, many of who have been specifically targeted, and media workers, at least 1,580 healthcare workers, 452 aid workers. More than 123,300 people have been injured, many of them critically wounded. And again, these are injuries that if the hospitals had the appropriate medical supplies, then many of these would not result in death. More than 14,000 people are still believed to be trapped under rubble. Again, these numbers are a pretty remarkable undercount. At least 92% of homes have been destroyed, 95% of school buildings, 88% of commercial facilities, 81% of the road network, 156 hospitals and clinics. By the way, not that it matters to Israel, but it is like a very clear-cut black and white war crime to attack a hospital, like in case anyone was curious.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that when this genocide first began and they first struck a hospital, so it was the first missile to hit a hospital, people were kind of upset, and Israel claimed, oh, it was Hamas. Hamas tried to fire a missile and it went backwards and it hit the hospital and all these things. And give it a few weeks and they stopped. When they bomb hospitals, they stopped claiming that it was Hamas, right? It was like initially, oh my God, we didn't bomb a hospital. And now they're just like, yeah, we bombed all the hospitals.
And this speaks to something that, again, I think I mentioned it last week, but I did an interview with Armenian human rights lawyer Karni Kirkonian about the issue with Armenia and Azerbaijan basically trying to take over Armenia and ethnically cleansing the area known as Nagorno-Karabakh, where the Artsakh Armenians have lived for like 6,000 years. And he pointed out that when you show someone with genocidal intent that you'll let them do a thing, like, for instance, ethnically cleanse an area, they're going to stop even trying to explain it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and, you know, Carney pointed out that, for instance, Azerbaijan released a stamp, like an actual stamp for, you know, for like a postage stamp that literally shows a person in a hazmat suit ethnically cleansing Nagorno-Karabakh of Armenians. So like, that's how brash that has become. It's the same thing with Israel. Like, they're not even trying to make it look like, oops, because the world has shown them that they can get away with it. So why bother trying to cover it up? It's the same with whether that be Aliyev in Azerbaijan, whether that be Modi in India, whether that be Netanyahu in Israel. Israel, in a statement released on May 27th, UNICEF regional director of the Middle East and North Africa said that in total, more than 50,000 children have reportedly been killed or injured since October 2023. How many more dead girls and boys will it take? What level of horror must be live streamed before the international community fully steps in? Yeah, great question. Clearly, there is no line. Like, there is no threshold of terrorist genocidal activity that the world leaders will see as a red line. Starvation is ongoing. Whatever, I mean, when we'll talk about it in a minute, the quote unquote aid, it does not deserve to be classified as aid. It is, even if it were classified as aid, it's not nearly enough to even feed like a small percentage of the population. So starvation is still ongoing. And please, if you hear anybody call it a famine, you correct them, because this is the same thing. Like with Ireland, they called it the potato famine, right? As if like, oh shit, things just didn't grow that year. No, it was imposed starvation by the British Empire. This is imposed starvation. Famine suggests that like, oh, some crops just didn't grow, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to not frame it that way, because it makes it sound, it gives Israel a pass, right? Gaza's healthcare system, they say it is collapsing. I don't think that that's a really correct way of putting it. It has collapsed. Gaza's Ministry of Health announced that 22 of Gaza's 38 hospitals are out of service. Only 16 hospitals are partially functional, and I'd say barely functional, because again, this is not because of a lack of expertise. I think that, you know, somebody that I've interviewed on the show on Project Censored is a doctor in Deir el-Balach, Gaza, and he really kept talking about like, the world needs to understand it's not that we lack expertise. Like, we are good doctors. Like, we're actually better than most because we can make do with basically nothing. But now we have less than nothing. You know, they're using Tylenol leftovers to deal with amputations. I mean, it's absurd. So they don't have medical supplies. So when we talk about a hospital, especially here in the West, we have a very specific image in our heads of what that looks like, right? Erase that image from your heads, because that's not what these hospitals are like in Gaza. They have been completely destroyed and are basically trying to triage and get people to survive using, you know, tearing off pieces of their clothing to use as tourniquets. Like it is the most atrocious and horrific and impossible conditions that you can imagine. The machines have been destroyed, like MRI machines and things like that. Many of them have been purposefully dismantled by Israeli forces. So Israeli forces will come into a hospital and like purposely dismantle an MRI machine so that it can't be used again. I'm not kidding. Like, this is, the levels of sadism continue to like you didn't think that it could get worse, and then it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time you think it can't get more disgusting, they come up with more shit.
95% of Gaza's agricultural land is unusable due to Israeli attacks. And by the way, this is land that will be likely unusable for potentially generations because of the poison from these bombs and from the military violence that has been meted out by Israel. So yeah, that's just a little snippet of where we are as we pass the 600th day of this genocide. There's not really much to.
Yeah, well, it's important to go through those numbers because we can't just act like it's the same as it was, a few weeks ago or whatever. We always need new updates. I want to go in. We got a lot more on Gaza coming up. I want to go into the new revelations that whatever they're calling themselves, the Gaza Health Foundation or something, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, that Israel has approved of, that the United States is allied with. They are the ones that have been bringing some little pieces of aid into Gaza and then shooting at people while they do it. Anyway, it's now come out that, and this is published at Sheer Post, that Mossad is one of the funders, one of the big funders of Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And that this goes along with the fact that we've been covering that this is part of Israel's plan, is to make the people so incredibly hungry that they have no choice but to go to wherever Israel's offering aid, and then Israel can disappear some of them, they can arrest some of them, they can get facial recognition on all of them, etc. But Israeli soldiers reportedly opened fire on stampeding crowds with just 8,000 boxes of rations, which is like nothing. That were handed out from an opaque organization calling itself the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF.
You can just call things humanitarian.
I know. There's no truth in marketing on that word humanitarian. Founded this February in Switzerland under a cloud of mystery, GHF serves as an umbrella for a network of private mercenary firms, which Israel is using to supplant the role of the UN in feeding Palestinians, which they've brought to the brink of starvation. The public has no idea who is funding the organization. A GHF spokesman told the Washington Post the foundation's already secured $100 million from an undisclosed donor. So where is this money coming from? Right-wing Israeli opposition figure and member of Knesset, Lieberman, proclaimed that GHF's mysterious financial angle was in fact the Israeli government. The money for humanitarian aid comes from Mossad and the Defense Ministry. And why is this right-wing Israeli lunatic
he doesn't like
outing this truth? Because they don't like that any aid is being given to Gaza. And so they're like furious that this, where in fact, this is a Mossad organization and they're revealing it. Another member of Knesset and de facto leader of Israel's loyal opposition has accused the Israeli government of funding two shell companies, pointing to GHF and the private mercenary firm Safe Reach Solutions, which was formed by CIA field operative Philip Riley. So you've got both Mossad and CIA connected to this thing. If true, this would mean...
Birds of a feather.
Yeah, I know. If true, this would mean Israel's military intelligence apparatus is effectively laundering massive sums of money through a weaponized aid scheme that forms the linchpin of its plan to ethnically cleanse Gaza. A leaked internal GHF document warned that the food distribution centers and residential compounds it was constructing in Gaza would be perceived as concentration camps with biometrics. The GHF model appears integral to Israel's stated plan to occupy 75% of Gaza, forcing starving and homeless people into what its military has branded, quote, humanitarian islands, designed to, quote, divide and rule. It is also a clear attempt at replacing UNRWA, the UN agency which is a massive UN agency that Israel has declared a terrorist organization and gone after them because they can't stand that they were helping people survive in Gaza. With no legal standing or formal mandate to operate in Gaza, GHF now operates at the pleasure of Israel's occupation army. But with an endorsement from the Trump administration and U.S. mercenary muscle maintaining its dystopian distribution centers, the scheme functions behind an American facade. Just a day before GHF's planned rollout in Gaza, the organization's CEO, Jake Wood, resigned in protest because apparently they didn't tell him that they're not actually a humanitarian organization.
I don't know how you can not know.
He resigned in protest, condemning the group's failure to uphold, quote, humanitarian principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality. Next, GHF COO David Burke fled for the emergency exit. David Kohler, a Swiss board member, also resigned. Leadership of the murky outfit has now gone to John Acree, a former USAID administrator.
Oh, USAID.
And here's the last little thing. GHF, which was technically founded in Switzerland, has had to flee Switzerland because on May 29th, yesterday, Swiss officials announced that GHF was violating several laws for foundations registered in its country. I'd love to know what those were. The Shattery organization subsequently announced that it's moving to the U.S., where it is likely to receive less scrutiny from the Trump administration, which has endorsed it. So there you have it. Even though we kind of knew there was something up with this aid organization, humanitarian organization, we now have a lot more evidence that they are connected to both Mossad and the CIA.
Good times.
Thank you, Dan, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. Okay, so let's move on to the connection between Gaza and all of us, how it impacts all of us, because I think this is a really important point that isn't made enough. And, you know, I'd like to believe that everybody in the world just cares about Gazans just because they're humans. But some people need to hear how things impact them and the connection to them.
Well, and to me, this isn't just about like, hey, you should care, because yeah, you should just care. But this is also a matter of, oh, what does this have to do with the issues that we face here? So I think it's not just like, this is for people who already care, but don't see like, oh, this is an issue that's happening over there. Yes and no.
Yeah.
So basically the imperialist, colonialist, capitalist apparatus, to give you a mouthful there. So this is a post by, I can't remember what it stands for, but
stands for what's right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a people-powered community radio station in DC called WPFW, and they wrote this post. You can check them out on Instagram, which is Leah's favorite platform.
Oh my God, fucking love it. Ugh. If I were to design the least helpful, most like confusing, I don't mean like I can't figure it out. I mean confusing and like, oh, someone posted it. Oh, it's gone. Oh, it's disappeared. Oh, never mind. Can't read it. Gone for humanity. Like, I would come up with Instagram. If I were like, could I have videos in a tiny little square on the screen that you can't rewind or fast forward? Instagram. It's the place you go for all this.
Starting a support group
for
people who have been harmed by Instagram. So basically, in a nutshell, in Gaza, U.S. funded bombs and sometimes just like U.S. made bombs, right? And military equipment are decimating Gaza. At the same time, Israel's occupation and apartheid system rely on decades of military aid, surveillance tech, and diplomatic cover from the West, particularly the United States. But that's not just shit that goes over there and stays over there, right? In the US, local police departments from New York to LA receive training in counterterrorism and crowd control from the Israeli military. This is something that the Jewish Voice for Peace and other organizations have called the deadly exchange, right? And for instance, in Cop City in Atlanta, the IDF has already trained Atlanta cops. This is going like the Cop City in Atlanta is slated to be a space where international, colleagues like the IDF are going to come there and help support in everything from crowd control tactics to, they literally have like, it's called Cop City because it's a literal city. Yeah. And so they'll show you how to like run into a home and, shoot people in there and, run into, a business or what have you. So that there's the deadly exchange aspect. There's also, for instance, the 1033 program, where cops in the U.S. get military equipment that has been used by the military, and one of a big driver of military spending is, of course, Israel. So from Ferguson, Minneapolis, Atlanta, armored vehicles, tear gas, rubber bullets, those are turned against, us, the people.
And many of the surveillance, like software and stuff, a lot of that comes from Israel as well.
You know what?
Oh, sorry. Lee, don't say anything ever.
So surveillance tech that's used on Palestinians, like, for instance, this blueprint for what are they called? Humanitarian islands? Fuck your face. These concentration camps within concentration camps obviously require a lot of surveillance. That tech is oftentimes, if not created, dreamed up in the United States. And then guess what? It's used here.
Sorry, you misspoke. Dreamed up in Israel.
I'm sorry, yes. Yeah. Dreamed up in Israel, but also with the support and help of the United States. And then it is also turned on communities here. So a couple of years ago, I covered the Tohono O'odham indigenous tribe in the Southwest. Then they're right by the U.S.-Mexico border. And their ancestral lands, guess what, include parts of Mexico and the United States, because borders are fucking made up. And so the U.S. government set up these huge surveillance towers that have everything from, like biometric scanners. They've got like the night vision and everything to ensure, like, to protect the border or whatever. But it's basically like a massive surveillance setup. Guess where they got that tech from? That tech is from Israel. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of this is used on not only indigenous peoples, but, a lot of it's used in predominantly Black neighborhoods. And that's not to say that like poor white neighborhoods get off scot-free. This is used on all people, including people who cross borders. Recently, and I think it was in April, somebody who works with Mondoweiss had their devices taken at a border when they came back into the U.S.
Oh, I have that story.
Oh, you do.
Here, I'll put it on the screen while you keep going.
And when they got to the border, and I can't remember what they said, but essentially the people at the border said, your rights don't apply here. Which I've covered too in the past. There is a constitution-free zone that spans, I'm not kidding, look it up, 100 miles from every Gesundheit, from every border, land and water border, inland, like from the border inland. So basically that's where like 2/3 of the Americans live.
Like 2/3 of Americans live in that area.
So like 2/3 of us, y'all, don't have the rights that we think we do. I mean, none of us have the rights that we think we do, but like super don't in those areas. And that's just a thing that they can do. And a lot of the surveillance tech, a lot of the biometrics, when they say to do the little eye scan at the airport and shit, these are weapons of surveillance that are shared between the United States and Israel. They go on to point out, as our domestic police state expands, dissent is criminalized. Activists are labeled as extremists. Solidarity with Palestine is painted as anti-Semitic, and truth-telling becomes more dangerous. The same tactics used to erase Palestinian resistance are used to delegitimize Black resistance, indigenous sovereignty movements, and immigrant organizing. I would also say environmental organizing, because eco-terrorism has long, so-called eco-terrorism. Actually, the real eco-terrorism is destroy ecosystems, but so-called eco-terrorism has long been a target of the United States empire. So really, whatever your issue is, there is a connection between the extreme surveillance and pushback, sometimes actual physical pushback that we get from the state. There is a connection between that and Israel. They feed off of each other when it comes to tactics. They feed off of each other when it comes to impunity. So I think that it's really important that we make these connections, not just because, we should give a shit, but also because we have to recognize these settler colonialist shit heaps of nations as connected when it comes to their ideologies. Their foundational ideologies are shared. And so the only way to combat one is to combat the other. And so I wanted to bring that to the table today.
No, these are great points. And as it says here, you don't have to be a Palestinian to feel what's happening in Palestine. And where is this? Back at the beginning. I like the way they put this. The common adversary that connects Palestinian families in Gaza as protesters at Ferguson, water protectors at Standing Rock, tenants fighting eviction in Atlanta is the global structure of power and control rooted in colonialism, capitalism, and militarized surveillance.
And they also write, when we fight for Gaza, we fight for Ferguson. When we really defend water in Standing Rock, we resist the same machine that displaces families in Sheikh Jarrah. So, yeah. And I know that can sound poetic and nice, but I think like if you really stop to think about it, like I know Lee talks about these layers of reality a lot. And if we really look at the roots and the root causes and the foundational systems that we're fighting, that we should be fighting, then we recognize that they're the same.
Well said. Well said. Okay, now let's go. Let's move away from Gaza for a few minutes. We're going to talk about the new visa restrictions as we continue to see our fascist government. And don't worry, I thought they were fascist under Biden too. Don't get your panties in a twist. But as we see our fascist government attack more and more people.
Can you get your boxers in a twist? Or your tidy whities?
I definitely have.
Can you get a thong in a twist, or is that like there's not enough material?
I don't know what to tell you on that. I've not done as much research on the thong situation.
I feel like you should.
Okay, I'll get on it.
Wearing a lab coat. This story is filed under one of like those, like, how does the Onion actually operate? Because I feel like we're just living in like a long article, like a long Onion article at this point. Everyone's favorite Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has announced new visa restrictions that he claims. You gotta laugh because there's so much to cry about.
Yeah.
That he claims are targeted at foreign officials who perpetuate censorship of Americans on social media platforms, while his agency, the State Department, under his direction, is scouring social media accounts of immigrants in the U.S. for dissent. Thou doth protest too much.
Oh, isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
So on Wednesday, Rubio cited supposed concerns over free speech, like you give a flying fucking piece of shit, levied by foreign officials enforcing regulations for social media platforms, regulations often aimed at combating disinformation that have affected American companies and individuals. He said, quote, "It's unacceptable for foreign officials to issue or threaten arrest warrants on U.S. citizens or U.S. residents for social media posts on American platforms while physically present on U.S. soil."
For foreign officials, this has to do with the warrants that are out for Netanyahu. And
so he didn't specify, but for instance, this is not Netanyahu related. Social media giants owned by big tech allies that were at the inauguration, like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, have faced numerous penalties under tech regulations. So, for instance, Brazil recently temporarily suspended X from the country due to disinformation. X may also be facing fines under the EU's social media regulations. So these are companies, right, that are owned by Americans like Zuckerberg, that are facing fines and penalties for being complete trash. So, for instance, you may be familiar with, I don't know if this is still the case, but like Fox News doesn't air in Canada as a news station because they don't classify it as news. They're like, this is not true.
yeah, is it still? I know that happened like a while back. They wouldn't allow Fox News because they had to declare they were entertainment. But is that still the case? I don't know.
I don't know if it's still the case. But anyway, that's an example. So Marco Rubio is saying that that's censorship of Americans, and it's a threat to their American free speech, which applies over there. But your free speech doesn't apply here in America if you're talking about Palestine. I'm sorry. Can we go back to the beginning? I got lost. So this is against billionaires and tech companies for basically like spreading disinformation and going against EU's social media regulations. So that's what Rubio's crying about. And at the same time, he is enforcing censorship against people in the United States who should supposedly have access to the First Amendment. I don't know if we're still doing that. I don't think so. But so
depends on your skin color.
Yeah, and what you're saying. So Rubio's going after people who are exercising their free speech, and then complaining and whining about how people in other countries are going after giant tech companies for being, spewers of bullshit. Now, here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in censorship in the sense that, like, I think that something, if somebody posts something that that's incorrect, they should be pulled off of a platform. I don't believe in that kind of censorship. I believe that free speech should be upheld. I just think it should apply to all of the people.
Yeah.
If there's I think they should be allowed to say shit about, Israel, Palestine, Nazis, guns, whatever. You should be allowed to talk about things. And if you're a person like Rubio, who's like going after people's free speech, then you're not allowed to complain about people going after people's free speach. Yeah, especially when it's big tech companies who are clearly not canceled or censored in really what we would understand to be the real meaning.
And of course, he also is revoking visas of just about anybody, any student at a university that has said something about Palestine. They're going after the Ivy League first, which I think, they have Trump has a special hatred for a lot of the Ivy League. But it's basically like, if you are a moral human being who actually has said something about genocide, considering it's been a year and a half, then they want to kick you out of the country. That's what it comes down to.
Also, Rubio and his ilk are not fans of Europe's Digital Markets Act, antitrust regulations that target consolidation in the tech industry. So they're, not fans of the anti-monopoly stuff that's going on. And at the same time, again, as Politico reported, Rubio is preparing to issue guidance for officials to scour social media accounts of student visa applicants for supposed anti-Semitism. So, dude, you've got no absolute zero moral standing on this issue. And indeed, the U.S. in general, way before Marco Rubio tap danced his way onto the scene, had no moral standing on the issue of free speech anyway. So, yeah.
Okay. Let's move to, actually, before I do that, let me remind everybody, brand new episode of Unredacted tonight just came out. This is a very popular episode. It's the top 11 signs that Israel is collapsing. And you can watch that at leecamp.com/unredacted is where you can go to get the whole Unredacted playlist. leecamp.com/unredacted. Also, I started a new YouTube channel I'd love for you to subscribe to. It's only going to have Unredacted Tonight videos. leecamp.com/YouTube will take you straight there. Eleanor, which site would you like me to highlight for you?
I wasn't ready for that question.
You don't know how to promote yourself? All right, I will promote you. Eleanor is awesome, and she has a pretty new Substack it's at eleanorgoldfield.substack.com. Go over there and subscribe. And I'm at substack.com/@realleecamp. So we got 2 new Substacks.
So there's another quote here that I wanted to share.
Thank you, JG, for supporting the show. Yes.
The administration has said that its attempted restrictions on Harvard University's foreign student enrollment are in service of, quote, rooting out the evils of anti-Americanism.
I think it's for rooting for the evils.
But So basically, like, their version of free speech is that big corporations can do, of course, whatever they want, but if you spout anything that could be construed as anti-American, which at this point, I mean, anybody with half a brain is going to be, then you can't go to college, I guess. They're also saying that they're restricting the visas of Chinese students who want to come here to college or university because they might bring communism with them. I wish I was kidding about that.
They very well might, and they might infect others. It's very infectious, and so you don't want that to happen. All right, we're moving on to a climate change story. A village in Switzerland, right, has been
is no more
buried,
basically. Is no more
due to the collapse of a massive glacier. Global warming alarm bells ring as what a weird way to phrase that. Alarm bells ring as I don't know. It sounds like something's festive. As glacier collapse buries entire Swiss village, a first in 125 years. The drone image shared by the Swiss president shows all of Blatten. Is that how it's pronounced? Swiss glaciers have lost 40% of their volume since the year 2000. So this is in 25 years.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm going to say it's a lot.
And quickly.
Yes. So there's video of this too, if you're into that kind of trauma porn. But and I mean the town was evacuated. I think there's like one person.
Not long before though. They got that evacuation right.
Oh no, I know.
I'm
just saying, like, we're not also looking at like hundreds of people who died. Like they were.
It seems like everyone survived, but they cut it close. 10 days before or something, they evacuate everybody, and then it's covered.
I mean, I kind of feel like it's coming. Like a glacier. Well, a glacier doesn't just go like doop. Like there's got to be some scientists can see that. Oh, this isn't attached anymore.
Yeah, but sometimes they see that a year before, like a big mudslide or something.
Well, I think you obviously when it gets warmer, that's when it's going to start to detach. I doubt it would happen in like December. Okay. Anyway, so basically, a professor of environment at the University of Zurich told Reuters that the extent of the damage to Blatten has no precedent in the Swiss Alps in the current or previous century.
No precedent.
I wonder what that could be.
What could be the unprecedented action that's happening globally that could answer it for this?
Switzerland is home to more than 1,800 glaciers, the highest number in Europe. They're not just critical to the ecosystem, but also central to tourism. Swiss glaciers have, as you pointed out, lost 40% of their original volume since 2000, according to the Swiss Academy of Sciences. And basically, the Swiss authorities have been saying that this is a problem since 2000, when or at least 2006. And according to a study by the Academy, 10% of the country's glacier volume melted between 2022 and 2023 alone. So in 1 year.
10% in 1 year.
10% in 1 year.
And how much you want to bet that this seems like a good clickbaity story that probably CNN would cover, but it seems like the type of thing CNN would cover and not mention climate change.
No.
They just say mudslide in Switzerland buries a village. And that'd be the end of it.
So basically, another professor pointed out that if nothing is done about climate change, Switzerland will lose all of its glaciers by 2100. And if you're wondering whether 1,800 glaciers are an integral part of that ecosystem that makes up what we know of Switzerland, yes, the answer is yes, they do.
Well, and as these glaciers disappear, what makes them up goes somewhere. It eventually gets out to the oceans, where you have the oceans rising. It means a lot of areas such as Florida will be underwater in not so long. it means that the ocean becomes less salty and less, the temperature increases, and that can cause the jet streams to, not the jet streams, are they called jet streams in the ocean? What are they called in the ocean? Anyway,
currents.
Current, yeah, something current. You can see that collapsing. So, and then that has major temperature. That has major temperature ramifications, like overnight. So, yeah, all this stuff is connected.
It's almost like it's all connected.
And you're saying we're part of this environment, or humans are a separate thing, right?
Absolutely. Apparently something that the government has tried to do is covering glaciers with white geotextiles to prevent melting since 2006. Obviously not doing enough, is it?
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion on how to try and save the glaciers.
However, as one scientist put it, these interventions are very expensive and cannot be scaled up in size. You can't save entire glaciers. The only way to do this legitimately is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Wow, he must be like the only scientist that's saying that.
Yes, except for 99.9% of all peer-reviewed scientific studies. And if you're wondering how many that is, that's over 88,000 peer-reviewed studies that talk about human-made climate change. And I remember I had someone in the comments go, "Oh, you believe the bought-off scientists?" Yeah, the 88,000 bought-off scientists. Climate change is now, it didn't used to be, but it's now the most studied thing in the world. Because you have scientists,
erectile dysfunction.
You have scientists around the world. No, they finished that one. They're done. They got the pills and they moved on. You have scientists around the world studying it, whereas a lot of other things you may just have scientists in a certain area studying it. But and the other funny thing about the person that said you believe the bought off scientists is, in fact, it's the reverse. Of that 0.1%, 99.9% of all scientists, the only ones the 0.1% have heavy connections to the fossil fuel industry. Okay. Since we're talking about natural disasters, let's move on to FEMA.
Did you ever share that drop site news piece where they have actual?
Oh no, I never did.
Oh my God. Okay.
Delete.
I have to
let me see. Okay. Drop site. FEMA.
It's so amazing. Okay. We have to share this with you guys because it's some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Okay. I think I found
from
it.
May 15th.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. So, I mean,
and by the way, let me just preface what we're about to say. So they're destroying FEMA. We're going to get into some of the details, but let me just preface this by saying it doesn't mean we think that everything FEMA's ever done is awesome. They've screwed up a lot, but that the answer is not to shred the organization. The answer is to make it so that FEMA is actually functioning better and is not racist, as many of the studies have shown that they're, they help out white areas of the country more than black areas. There's all kinds of stuff like that. So yes, there are problems, but the answer.
You don't pull money. It's kind of like public schools. Like a lot of people say that, yeah, public schools are shit, so we should just, close them and have everything be private or charter. And I'm like, so that's the problem. If you funded them properly, like other countries do, like Finland has some of the best schools in the world. Guess who funds them? The state. So it's like you actually have to give more money to a thing if you want it to work properly, not take. So in order to make FEMA less shitty, which it's been for a long time, like I went down to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. There was graffiti all over the place that said FEMA es la problema, like FEMA is the problem. It's been the problem for a long time. And also, basically destroying FEMA and making it not a thing anymore is not the answer. You have to make it a better thing. You have to actually make it do the thing that it said it was going to do. So I have next week, I have an interview with a friend of mine in Western North Carolina to give updates on the situation down there. On May 22nd, FEMA denied.
Oh, I thought we were doing this.
No, I'm going to, but
okay.
I just wanted to give the backstory of why I'm even talking about FEMA.
Okay.
On May 22nd, FEMA denied North Carolina's request for extended disaster aid, despite the fact that.
Go ahead.
Oh,
you're so easily distracted.
Despite the fact that there's billions in damage and ongoing recovery needs, FEMA just said, no, we're not going to help you. So these folks are on their own. It's also important to note that hurricane season is upon us. And at the same time, FEMA is trying to basically close its doors. Where is okay, so I wanted to... this is the current head of FEMA is this remarkable douche canoe named Richardson, David Richardson. And Dropsite News got some audio that was leaked from a meeting between FEMA employees and Richardson. So let's see.
So this was his this is him speaking to like a ton of people at FEMA, right? This is he's like giving a speech to them, right? Town hall.
So part of it is a town hall, but and then like there's questions. And to me, the gold is in the questions because he doesn't know his ass from his elbow.
Okay.
For instance, okay, one FEMA employee says, so sir, with the upcoming hurricane season looming, will we have job security with the uncertainty of FEMA being dissolved? Because that's obviously an issue for the person who works there and also an issue for people who would be potentially depending on FEMA for help.
They were, and the background is they were saying they wanted to dissolve FEMA.
This is his response. I'll give you a heads up as soon as I can. We do need many of us. I'm not going to say all. I'm not going to say the majority. But, we're in a transition phase. So there's a transition period. And normally a transition period, there's going to be, I don't want to take too much risk. And I'm sure that's the case so that we can respond to disaster season. What are the words that you just strung together? You absolute loon.
They are the words of someone who has no answer to anything that's being asked of him.
He said, okay, so another employee asks, as we focus on our disaster efforts, when will we plan for non-disaster programs and actions? Richardson, that will have to be once we get our plan in place. We've got to get the 2025 disaster plan in place. Dude, it's May. Why would you not have a 2025 disaster plan in place? That should be next week. And then we'll start passing information on it, affecting the plan, making sure it's rolling down the road. And then we'll start doing steady state operations.
It sounds like a Mad Libs of government speak.
So basically, one of the things was that they want to basically unload all of the job of FEMA onto individual states, which is never going to work because states don't have the money, right? But then a FEMA employee asks, if states haven't budgeted, hired, or trained staff to handle the response and recovery, which they haven't because they don't have the money, what timeline do you expect to make this a reality? That's a great question. This is amazing. I just had a talk with someone today because there was a fire, I think in Minnesota or in New Mexico.
I often confuse those two, Minnesota or in New Mexico. They're so similar, like same food, same people, same scenery, same flora and fauna. It's just Minnesota and New Mexico always mix them up. Like I'll call someone in Minnesota and I'll say, how's your cactus doing? I just do that all the time.
So part of it is letting people know as we transition, okay, we will transition this summer to something else. I'm not sure if we can completely overcome the budget challenges, but we will at least be uncovering and discovering ways to do that. care to share that with the class, Dave?
Well,
like, what are the uncovered ways that you're going to figure that out?
And there's something else that we can really, the layers of reality here is that turning FEMA into a garbage shit show is a long-term plan of our ruling elite. It goes back years. I mean, you got to remember George W. Bush put a horse trainer, like literally his only credential was training horses, in as the head of FEMA, because he donated to the campaign and was friends with Bush or something. And that was right before Katrina. And then Katrina happens and you've got this idiot in charge of FEMA. And why would they do this? Well, it's similar to so many other programs that they have gutted. It's the FEMA only really helps people who don't have any money, because if you've got a lot of money, you can get out of the area. You can take a private jet. You can take a helicopter. You owe one of your 7 houses got flooded. Not that big a loss. Insurance will cover it. You'll probably have crazy good insurance, etc. So the rich don't use the resources of FEMA. It goes mainly to the poor and middle class, which anything that just goes to the poor and middle class is meaningless to our idiopaths at the top of this system. Idiot sociopaths. So
I like idiopaths. That's a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is one of my favorites. So he's talking about these fires in Minnesota or New Mexico and how the states are going to have to handle basically what FEMA's been doing or should be doing. And he goes, some states are pretty good at this. The other day I was chatting with my girlfriend. She's from Texas. She's got huge red hair. She's from Texas. I'm reading the transcript, okay?
It's actually, is this George W. Bush? Sounds like it might be.
And I said something and she said, well, how was it? I said, how come it takes so long to drive 10 hours from Galveston to Amarillo? And she said, Texas is bigger than Spain. I didn't know that. So I looked at the map. Texas is huge. I mean, if you put it in the middle of Europe, it takes up most of Europe.
The head of FEMA just realized Texas is big. That's the point we're at. He just started to wrap his little brain around the idea Texas is big.
And that his girlfriend has red hair. I mean, I'm reading the transcript, okay?
But we got to give him some credit. The hamsters in there are working their asses off. They are like, they're doing their best.
And then he goes on to say, which this is just patently and provably false, Texas does disaster recovery very, very well. And so does Florida, possibly the 2 worst states at disaster recovery.
Yeah, Florida's shit.
So we should be able to take some lessons. So the federal government is taking lessons. Okay.
Lessons from Florida.
And there should be some budgeting things that they have, I bet. I bet Governor Abbott has a rainy day fund for fires.
Does anybody remember where the power went out in Texas? How terrible they did? They just it took weeks, and Ted Cruz flew to Cancun to get out of it.
I bet Governor Abbott has a rainy day fund for fires is my favorite line.
And so he's going to call Governor Abbott and say, how'd you get that rainy day fund? We want to do something like that.
Well, and he says, and he doesn't spend it on something else. What?
Wow.
Okay. And then another FEMA employee asks, what are your intentions for mitigation? You've only mentioned preparedness, response, and recovery. He goes, save that for the next time we talk, but I will look. I think mitigation. I'm going to answer that.
I think mitigation should be tied to the grants process.
He doesn't know. I bet you he doesn't know what mitigation means.
Wow.
So, okay, then fine. This is the last thing. I'm sorry.
Eleanor can't help herself.
He says, a FEMA employee asks, what are your primary objectives over the next 3 months? Well, number one, just to make sure that we're prepared.
I'm going to try and learn bigger words. One of them.
I'm going to see what other states are compared to Spain.
I'm going to find out the difference between Minnesota and New Mexico.
Just to make sure that we are prepared for disaster season, okay? And that means having the disaster plan written, okay? I know how folks write plans.
Damn.
Do you?
That should be on his office door. Hey, I'm the guy who knows how folks write plans. So you just back up.
I like a lot of the plans that are already in place at FEMA. Could you speak about some of them?
Could you talk about the mitigation? This has got to be George W. Bush. How could this not be? Is it his brother?
But we need one specific to this disaster season. We will do the mission analysis, okay? Okay. And we will also begin looking at what FEMA 2 is going to be, going to look like.
He's calling it FEMA 2.0 or something. That's what he means. Yeah, so you're going to think about what it looks like? Yeah, that's a good idea. When you come up with some idiot harebrained scheme called FEMA 2.0, you might want to have an idea of what that is. No?
I will also be traveling because I need to get eyes on target. Figure out what's going on downrange. I want to go to the state level. I particularly want to go see how Texas and Florida have their disaster plans.
It feels like an AI that's grabbing terms that it's seen in other speeches. So he's like, and it just goes bing, 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 downstream. I want to look downstream. And bing, 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 bing. And we're going to find out about disaster preparedness. He's just like saying the phrases. I need eyes on the prize.
It's dark in there.
And we may die. Okay. Is there anything, we're going to wrap up. Is there anything else you'd like to say about FEMA?
I just that we're fucked. Like, I'm sorry, but we're getting nothing from them. In a May budget draft, Trump proposed slashing FEMA grants by $646 million.
And keep in mind, he wants to funnel all this to rich people in the form of tax cuts.
And North Carolina needs about $60 billion to rebuild, and they're getting last I checked, they're getting about $5 billion, but even that is not going to where it actually needs to go because it's. So yeah, yes. Sorry, I have no good. I mean, we all had a good laugh there, but we laughed because there's so much to cry about. We're fucked.
Fair.
I wish I could leave you,
but we have each other,
and we have.
The revolution will have laughter mug. For those of you listening to the podcast, you just had awkward silence. But yes, the revolution will have a laughter mug. All right, so we're wrapping up brand new Unredacted Tonight. You can go watch right now if you haven't already watched it. LeeCamp.com/unredacted. Check out all of Eleanor's work. Awesome. Other than this podcast, Common Censored, she has an awesome podcast called Project Censored. The queen of all things censored is Eleanor.
I uncensoring them though.
Yes, yes.
Kind of
the queen of uncensoring them. What else? I'll be back Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, and keep fighting. And the revolution will have laughter.
It will.
It will. It will. See you later.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
The same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha.